Welcome to the Art and Science of Complex Sales, proudly presented by Membrain. This podcast is your gateway to mastering the craft of modern selling. If you're passionate about growth, impact, and unlocking full potential in sales and revenue, you're in the right place. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And now let's get started with today's guest.
You want a mindset shift that's going to help you outperform 92% of the world's salespeople? Listen up. We got Richard Fenton and Andrea Waltz. They are two, we'll call them contrarians in the marketplace, but man, is their work fantastic. And it's helping organizations and people shift your mindset. Their seminal book, Go for No, Yes is the Destination, No is How You Get There, has helped people all over the world increase their persistence, their learning, their accountability, and overall their results. So listen up to Andrea and Richard. Andrea and Richard, welcome to the program.
Hey, Paul, great to be with you.
Yeah, great to be here.
I'm so excited for this. So we first met, and I first saw your speech and your presentation at the Sellwell conference a couple months ago in Texas. So after that, I had to have you on because I love the work you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was a great conference. It was a good audience, an audience that really wanted to improve. We love that.
Yeah.
Well, and you come at sales from a different perspective, and I'll just say that because it's a perspective I think that people need to consider. But you have one key metric, right? Mm-hmm. What is that metric?
Yeah, our one key metric is all about how many no's you collect. It's all about rejection, and I guess if you want to couch it in the B2B sales world, it's disqualification. It's getting to the no fast, asking tough questions early, and being okay with that, and then moving on to find prospects that are more qualified for what you have.
So let's keep diving on this. How did you come about this? Because you got some great stories on that, and I'd love for you to share with the audience.
Sure. Well, Go for No got its origin early in my career. I had failed in the car business and moved out of Chicago, went to Los Angeles, immediately got another job in sales, of course. But this time it was selling suits for a living. And I was convinced that in retail, you couldn't fail. In outside sales, you had to pick up the phone, you had to talk to strangers, you had to cold call. But in retail sales, you're standing on the floor, somebody parks their car, they walk into the mall, they tell you what they want, and you give it to them. So I thought, well, how hard could that be, right? I mean, I'm going to just be great at this. And then you can imagine my great surprise when 2 months in, I find myself failing again. And my sales are actually so abysmal that I was pretty sure they were going to fire me. And that's when a district manager by the name of Harold was coming in to visit the store. And I thought, if I could just impress this guy, if I could just have one good sales day, maybe they would see some potential in me and give me some more time to improve. So anyway, we all have donuts and coffee. The store opens up at 10 in the morning and I get the very first customer who comes in. And, I did my typical retail greeting. Hi, how can I help you? And this customer says, I want to buy an entire wardrobe of clothing. And I thought, this is it. This is my magic moment. I'm going to show Harold what a great salesperson I can be. And over the next half hour, this guy did buy a wardrobe of clothing. I mean, he bought a sport coat, slacks, suit, shirts, ties, socks, belts, underwear. I mean, it was a really big sale for the time period. This goes back now a few years, but it was $1,100. I rang the sale up, walked the customer to the front door. I come back in and I'm waiting for Harold to congratulate me. And he doesn't say anything. So after a couple minutes, he finally threw me a bone. He said, that was a nice sale, kid. And I went, yeah, man, my chest is puffing out with pride. I'm like, yeah, that was a good one, wasn't it? And he goes, yeah, nice sale. Then there's this moment of silence. And Harold proceeded to ask me the question that would literally change the course of my life and your life for that matter.
That's true.
He said, out of curiosity, Richard, what did that customer say no to? And Paul, I have to tell you, it really ticked me off. I mean, I am trying so hard to impress this guy. I've just had this great sale and he's asking me this weird question, which makes no sense to me at that point in time. And I'm like, what do you mean? What did he say no to? Did you not watch the sale I just had? He bought a suit, sport coat, slacks. I started running through the whole list of everything he bought. And Harold go, whoa, time out. He goes, I'm not asking you what he said yes to. I'm asking you, what did he say no to? And after I stopped being defensive and I thought about it and I realized the customer didn't say no to anything. Every single thing I laid in front of that guy, he said yes to. I said, Harold, he didn't say no to anything. And then he asked me the other really great question. He said, well, then how did you know he was done? And it's really simple. I knew he was done. I mean, I was a mid-20-year-old kid. I wasn't making a lot of money. The idea of walking into a menswear store and spending over $1,000 on clothing was outside of my consciousness. I couldn't even imagine it. So when you as a customer got to my mental spending limit, you were done. That was it. I would shut the sale down because I couldn't imagine a number higher than that. And Harold said, I watched you sell and you're not half bad, kid, but your fear of the word no is going to kill you. And then fortunately, he said, but if you could just get over that, he said, I think you're going to become one of the great ones. And I went home that night and thought, God, could this guy be right? Could I have completely misunderstood my function as a salesperson? Because I thought my function was to get people to say yes to me while simultaneously avoiding the word no. And he's telling me I should increase the number of no's I hear, and that if I do, they will lead me to the yes. And I went in the next day with a decision to fail my way to success, and it worked.
Well, and it's such a common story. I mean, and I would say common in that fear, and the fear of the no dominates sales. And even look at most of sales training, which I love how you talk about this. Most of sales training is about getting to a yes, or you talk about objection handling, right? How to combat those objections and that type of stuff. It's really centered around that fear of, no or potential conflict of any sort with that salesperson. So what type of success do you start to see when you flip this on its head, when you say, actually, let's go for that no?
Yeah, well, it's interesting what we see. A lot of, I guess, what we call reprogramming has to be done because people are so trained to go for yes. And which, of course, that's what we want. Make no mistake. In fact, the subtitle of our book is Yes is the Destination. No is how you get there. So we want yeses. But the methodology, and that's kind of the thing is, well, first of all, let me back up. We obviously didn't create this idea of hearing no. That was, we get a lot of credit for it. We were just, I guess, probably the first people to package it in something palatable where you can really understand, go for no, and it kind of makes sense. But we know we didn't come up with this idea of disqualifying and hearing no early on. And so I think for a lot of salespeople, they are taught to go for yes. They are taught to avoid no. We're biologically wired to not hear no. And so it takes a lot of kind of reprogramming of the mindset to realize that no is a good thing, that there's actually value in hearing no, and what value can you extract from that, and how the more no's you hear statistically, often that is how you get to more yeses. And this is probably the most controversial thing we deal with, Paul, which is the quantity versus quality question, right? And I think in today's sales world, we have swung so hard over the last, however many years, 2 decades, into quantity. It was just it was make 100 calls a day. It was spam email. And now we're swinging back to hyper personalization and quality. And where Richard and I are with this is you've got to be somewhere in the middle, I think. You can't, what we find is so many people hesitate and have such fear, as you just brought up, around getting no, that they don't make enough calls. They're not reaching out to enough people. They're not sharing their story with enough people. And so you've got to have that. Simultaneously, we all need to get better at the quality game.
Yeah, when I dive into it, and to go back to the start of this conversation with that one key metric, I mean, it really becomes, tell me if you agree with this or not, but it seems that it becomes a measure of persistence and learning, right? Which are two of the core aspects of sales. And even in your story right there, I mean, you said, I'm going to fail my way to success. That's no becomes this measure of, am I giving it my all, that quantity, and quality, that learning, like
Right.
how do I dive into that learning and actually make something out of it?
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, if you take this quantity quality question or matrix, if you will, and you think about it, you can look at the extremes for two different types of people. You've got one person who says quality is everything. I have to know how to respond to 103 objections. I have to have 22 closes. I have to I have to know every feature and benefit that my product, could possibly solve. And they spend so much time on trying to improve the quality of their sales ability and of their sales presentation. They think that improving the quality is going to create sales. Well, not if you don't make calls. I mean, if you're not out there presenting to someone, it doesn't matter how good your presentation is. You can deliver your presentation in the mirror, right? And wordsmith it to death until it's perfect. If you don't get out and deliver it, no one's buying. You take the other end of the spectrum. You get the person who says, I call on people. I dial the telephone 34 hours a week. I literally, my fingers cannot hit the pad button. I'm calling and calling and calling, and I call on people and make them, and I'm not making any sales at all. Well, they've got a quantity solution, but they apparently don't have the quality to be able to ask the right questions and to present the product well and to close people. So when Andrea says you have to find out, what the middle ground is, we can almost always diagnose what someone's problem is when we find out how many calls they're making, and we ask them, a little bit about their presentation, and you can see where is the gap. And so, as she says, somewhere in the middle is the answer. But that said, if you had to pick one or the other, and you had to say, okay, which one is really more important, quantity or quality? And the answer is quantity. The quantity of calls has got to be
controversy,
but it's got to be. I mean, in my example,
Yeah.
if you practice your sales presentation is perfect and you've got quality and you don't have any quantity, you can't make a sale at all, zero. However, you can go out into the marketplace with the worst stumbling, stuttering, unfilled, screwed up presentation in the world. And if you hit the right prospect at the right time, at the right price, they're going to buy from you no matter how bad you are in the presentation. And so if you have to do one or the other, we say put the quantity as the lead and then let the quality try to catch up to it.
So and that is the fail forward kind of mentality, right? And I guess from your two examples, I agree with you completely. I've led teams of more than I can count at this point in terms of the number of salespeople, and I found that I used to write these huge scripts and these huge documents that everybody would have to read, right? And they'd have to read it and take tests on it and do everything, and then and that's not a bad thing. What I found was the bad thing is the people that couldn't get on the phone until they had done that and passed it at 110%. And they, that they just had this inherent fear of that no, right? Yeah. And then on the flip side, you're right, is the people that got on way too early and didn't read the thing at all. They got lucky once every, 200 calls, and just because they got lucky and happened to like somebody that was talking to them. One of the stories you told at the Sell Well that I would just love for you to go into is your story about your relationship, and that is actually persistence and learning. I would say, in like in just a beautiful little human package. Like I loved that story.
Yeah. Well, when Andrea and I were first dating, I think I kind of pushed things a little too fast.
Yeah.
I started asking her to marry me within the first month.
Yeah.
Within the first month of our relationship, I said, "Will you marry me?" You know, she's like, "We've been seeing each other for a month. I can't say yes to that." And well, I decided that I was going to ask her to marry me every day. And I did. I just, every day I said, "Will you marry me? Will you marry me?" I kept going. And I asked her to marry me every day for over a year without missing a day. I asked her every day. I think it came to over 400 times in all. And then one day we're walking through a Macy's department store. And I said, "Are you going to marry me or what?" And she says, "Yes." And I mean, literally, I was so so focused on going for no. When she said yes, I was completely thrown by it. I mean, I at first I almost didn't hear it, and I went, "Wait a second, she just said yes." And then, of course, I realized I hadn't bought the ring. So yeah, which was kind of missing the quality piece. So I ran over to the jewelry department. I bought the ring. I go back and I find her in the shoe department. And she's sitting in a chair trying on shoes, and the salesperson sitting in front of her. And I knelt down next to the salesperson and did my formal proposal. But it'd be a good example of leading with quantity first, and letting the quality come up, come up from the rear.
From the rear, absolutely.
Yeah, so.
But Paul, I like what you said. No's are a metric of persistence, absolutely. And one of the things that we tell people all the time is, if your head hits the pillow at night and you didn't hear one no, just one no, then you're probably not selling to your full potential. You're not having enough conversations, because if you think about it, no's should be throughout your entire business development process. They're top of funnel, they're middle of funnel, they're discovery calls, presentations, trying to get other people involved if need be, the close, the after the sale, everything that happens after the sale in terms of delivering and customer service and getting reviews and getting testimonials and staying connected. So in a typical sale, you could make the case and not even talking about the number of follow-ups that you do and the number of questions that you ask. 10, 20 opportunities to get a yes and no, a decision from people. I mean, that's pretty standard, I think. And even in a transactional sale, which is our background, like B2C, I mean, if you're maximizing the sale, if you're offering all of the options, if you're making sure that to sell the customer all of the things that they don't know about, they don't know what they don't know, then getting no's is easy. So if you're not hearing one, you're just not playing to win.
Right. And if you, as Andrea's saying, if you do this whole process, there should be lots of no's. I think there's a lot of salespeople, and they get to the end of their presentation and there's the moment of silence. And then the prospect says, "Okay, that's really interesting. Let me think about it." I think there are a lot of salespeople who are relieved. They're like, "Oh, that's great. They're going to think about it. I didn't get rejected. They didn't say no." They'd rather leave this sale in limbo, right? And prolong it than to just get to a yes or no decision. And what we find is interesting is that when people say, like, "Let me think about it," it's really hard to address that in the moment without looking manipulative or like you're applying pressure. Think about it. What do you want to think about? I just explained all the features and benefits to me. You just said you've got the money. Think about it. I mean, so we don't want to put that kind of pressure on people, but "let me think about it" just puts you in no man's land, right? You're just hanging. I would rather get them to say no, because if they say no, I can then say, "Wow, I'm really surprised. Based on everything you told me about your company's needs, the budget you have, the goals you've set, I'm surprised you didn't decide to go with it. Can you tell me why you're saying no?" See, I can make progress with a no, but I can't make much progress with "let me think about it" without looking like I'm, working, like I'm really trying to work them. So that's one of the reasons that we love no so much, is you can do more with a no than you can with a "let me think about it."
100%. 100%. And even if the "let me think about it" or the "send me some more information" is like the kiss of death, right?
It is.
But it is being, so how are you working with both B2B and B2C? Like, this is a courageous ask. It feels like a courageous ask a lot of times. So in that, let me think about it. We get relieved. We're like, okay, man, we're still in. I still got that deal in my pipeline. They just need a couple of weeks to think about it. How do you start working with people to say, hey, we got to get you a courage injection as well as a skills injection in terms of how we're dealing with that, even to get them to the point to say, tell me a little bit about what you're thinking about. Because I thought so how does Go for No dive in and help people?
Yeah. So it's interesting because we are methodology agnostic. It doesn't matter if you're into strategic selling, Sandler, spin, challenger, like whatever. It really, Go for No is a mindset that needs to be layered into your process. And so because of that, and because our business model of what we love to do, our love, I guess, has been all these years has been speaking. So primarily we impart this philosophy through speaking engagements, half-day workshops. We're not going in and changing process. One of the real fun things, but we've been kind of looking at fun ways to expand. So one of the things that we did was create, of course, like so many people have, online learning. And so that's one of the deliverables that we've got. And also a really fun thing that I wish more companies would take me up on. I have to go for no of my own product. And that is, we've got a 21-day challenge, which is really cool because it's 21 days where people basically, like, it's all about Go for No. It's all about just how many no's can we collect as fast as we can. And when I find that when people are in a challenge like that, it's, there's something about it. It's kind of like, okay, I'm running this short race. I'm willing to try this. I'm willing to fall on my face. Easier than like, okay, this is the new plan. Everyone's going for no now. It's like, all right, let's try this. And I see people get a lot out of it. There's a lot of learning that goes on. And in the challenge, we have, it's a mixed group. These are people that come to us, B2C people, B2B people. It's usually kind of half and half, but everybody's there for the same reason, whether they're, and some honestly are like making good money and they're doing well. They just want to be better. Some people are struggling. They're not doing so great. They want to switch it up. They want to dig in a little bit more. But the commonality is they need this mindset. They know they need it. They recognize that they have a problem. And so that's one of probably the most fun things. And I like it because I get to hear like what's going on with people today.
Yeah. I see it being applicable across all areas, like, the front end of the sales process. I would love to get as many no's as possible, even just when asking people to meet with me. Yeah. Right. Means I'm having the conversations, and that means that I have at least I find when you're working with people, I'm kind of jumping in my head mentally on this, but so audience, hopefully you can follow me. But when we're working with people and we actually get to that decision, right? We actually get to a yes or no, or we actually, yeah, sure, I'll meet with it. There's some sort of connection that happens there with a prospect, right? That I find they're actually more willing to talk to you the next time, even if they've said no the first time. Do you guys find that in your work?
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. And, we're thinking about, we haven't decided yet. We're thinking about doing a sequel to our sequel called Go for No, KNOW. And it's based on the whole idea that all things being equal, people will do business with people they know, like, and trust.
Shout out to Bob Berg.
Shout out to Bob Berg and others.
Yeah,
Jeffrey Gitomer and a few others.
Yeah.
And if people really will do business with people they know, like, and trust, think about the process of calling on somebody and then having them say no, and then you call them again and they say no, and you call them the third time, and maybe you get into some small talk. Maybe you're like, hey, did you see the game? That was amazing. I can't believe they blew it in the ninth inning. Oh, you're a Cardinals fan? Wow. So every time you get rejected, right? Every time you get a no, they are getting to know you. And it won't be until maybe the third, fourth, or fifth call that they finally do what you just said. They develop some form of connection. And whether it's that they like you or whether it's that they respect your persistence and the way that you've handled yourself through the process, and they say, I deserve to get, this person at least deserves to get a chance to present his product. And then that's where the no, where the KNOW part comes in. And then through that whole problem, they begin to like you. And then if you follow through on all the promises you make, hey, I'll have the proposal to you Thursday at noon, and it's in their inbox Thursday at 11, then they start to trust you. No, like, trust. They're still saying no to you, but the no, like, trust is building through that process. So there's value in every no. Every time you hear the word no, you've made some progress towards a relationship.
I like that. Get to KNOW. I mean, because every no, you know more about. Every NO, you KNOW more about the prospect, and they KNOW about you. For some reason, that movie, that Will Smith movie, The Pursuit of Happiness from 2006, jumped in my head. I don't know if you guys know that one, but where he's just literally taping his phone to his hand just so he can get to know people. I mean, really, I mean, he's going after it. Well, hey, how do people get to, well, let's first talk a couple. You got a couple books on the market. So please, what are those book titles and how do people find those?
So we wrote Go for No, which is our central book. It's a fun fable, easy read. We recently just released this year Go for No, the sequel, also a fable story.
Took 25 years to write.
25 years
we're not all that fast.
Right. But we also did a book a couple years ago, which is our unsung hero, which I loved it. And we call that one When They Say No. And it's 44 things to do, think about, act upon when you do get that no. So, Richard and I talk all about go for no. And then we were like, well, I was like, we need a book where, like, what do people do when they get that no? What are they supposed to do? What's next? What should they say? Should they ask again? Absolutely. You got to ask again, especially for meetings. Like, so many people, like, they get a no and it's like they run. Like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Sell the value of the meeting, ask politely again. And then if they're like, nope, then at least you did your job. Sometimes we just have to be better advocates for what we've got.
Yeah, that relief factor when you hear sometimes when you get that call and you say no to a meeting and somebody's like, okay, thanks, Mike, and they're like, oh man, I made that call. I got rejected, but okay, at least now I can hang up. That it's so prevalent. Like it really is incredibly prevalent. So I love the fact that you're working on this mindset with people. I think it's huge for sales. How do people get in touch with you and find you if they want to just chat on this?
Yeah, we're well branded. So if you type in Go for No on the internet, you will absolutely find us. And at our website, goforno.com, we've got a fun assessment. Real simple, takes like 2 minutes to complete, and it will help you determine your no quotient, which is where you are mentally in terms of your thinking around failure, rejection, hearing the word no. So it's kind of a fun thing we developed.
Yeah. And last question I have for you is, this is more from a systems perspective. Like when somebody wants to implement this stuff, do you actually, is this stuff that you actually have them build into their tracking processes and that stuff? How many no's are you getting? What's your persistence level? That type of stuff. Is that the type of, I know it's about changing mindset, but reinforcing that mindset. What are the type of things that you recommend?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. We don't do a lot of in-depth coaching or consulting. We don't try. We certainly don't try to change anybody's existing sales process. So whatever if they're doing 5 steps, 7 steps, 31 steps, we're not going to mess with that at all. We're trying to deal just with the mindset piece that gets people to say, oh, no can be good instead of being bad. And then they look for all the places within their own process. So I don't want to say we've avoided going deep. We just pretty much, we're more keynote speakers than we are consultants. But we like to think that the books that we've written, like When We Say No is an example, where we're giving people the practical, tools and tips. And I just want to say one thing before I forget. I wanted to say this earlier. years ago, we interviewed Jack Canfield, who wrote the Success Principles and Chicken Soup for the Soul. We were at his house. I mean, he's a great guy, big library. And he said something unbelievably profound. He said, if you think rejection is bad when someone else says no to you, he says, you know what's worse? Self-rejection, where you don't pick up the phone and you reject you. And I was like, oh, wow.
So good.
So that's kind of at the heart of this thing is don't reject yourself. Let the other person say no to you, right?
Yeah.
Don't steal their opportunity to say no. They have the right to hear your presentation and to say no. Don't you make assumptions in your head that they're not going to buy from you so you don't pick up the phone. It's your job to make the call. It's their job to say no if they want to.
But I will add to that, the companies that have had us in to do presentations, workshops, when leadership, sometimes we go in and it's like, cool, go for no, flavor of the month, out now. And then they bring someone in, 6 months later. The companies that have had us in where the leaders, the sales leaders are on board, they absolutely add no as a metric in their process. They do challenges, they award, they tell us, we're awarding the top no getter, for the month. So they find ways to implement it in their own process.
That's awesome. But it's such a measure of knowledge and learning and persistence, and you highlighting it, and just the mindset of that permission to fail, that permission to get a no, and to actually view it as a move forward moment is something that so many salespeople need to hear. So thank you for the great work.
Appreciate
Thanks
it,
so
Paul.
much.
All right. Well, I would love to have you back on, especially if you write that KNOW book.
Yeah.
I'd love to have you back on, and maybe even just to preview it a little bit.
Okay.
Sound like a plan?
Yeah. Total plan.
We'll be here.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, thank you everybody for listening. That's the end of today's show with the Art and Science of Complex Sales. Please make sure that you're liking, subscribing, clicking, sharing, all of that good stuff. And please make sure you're going and following Andrea and Richard. Buy Go for No. It's a great read, and it's worth it. And it's a short read, which the intellectually challenged like myself appreciate, but it's a short read. It makes a ton of sense, and it will change your mindset. So with that being said, keep shining bright, everybody. And we'll say goodbye from the Art and Science of Complex Sales.